this is going to be one of those videos where I may have to at times insert my personal opinion, right? This video comes from a dream that I've had, and while I'm not here to say whether child support is right or wrong, in this particular dream, child support was a big factor, right? Now, for me personally, child support is not one of those black and white areas. People love to make it that either it's right and you're all for it, or it's wrong and you're completely against it. But I think more people need to start thinking about child support in that sort of like gray area. Child support to me can really go either ways. Like, yes, there are some benefits for it. There are some instances where child support is needed and is deserved. And at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and act like there are not instances where you have people who take advantage of the system, right? There are a lot of people, particularly men, women as well, but because in most households we know that women get custody, the courts are more prone to giving women custody. It's more men who are hurt in this situation, right? I know a lot of people really get into heated debates and arguments about it because those who are against it love to throw out statistics, and when they do, they tend to pick the most the most unrealistic ones, right? Like they love to use celebrity statistics of how this celebrity's not even wife, most of the time it's like their baby mama, their child's mother is getting thousands of dollars a month, and how unnecessary that is, right? But in the court's eyes, they want the child to have the same manner of lifestyle. Like whether the child lived with mom or with dad, the child should be able to maintain the same level of lifestyle. So that goes into a factor when they are giving these large amounts for these celebrities and these people who make significant amounts of money. But a lot of times, the people who are using these arguments aren't even in that boat. If you look at these statistics, the average person that's paying child support is paying around $300 a month. That is the average payment that is going out, is about $300 a month. And I'm not going to say that $300 a month shouldn't be breaking the bank for anyone, because it really depends on your income. And if you're only paying $300 a month, then then you can pretty much calculate that your income is on the lower side of the spectrum. So for some people, let's say for example, if your take home check is only like 11 or 1200 every 2 weeks, taking away 300 is a significant chunk of that. But there are ways, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like the court doesn't make it difficult and like there's a probably better chance than not that it's not going to be approved. There are ways that if your child support payments are too high, that you can prove financial hardship and you can do a modification to get those rates lowered, but you have to look into the rules for your state. But that's neither here nor there, right? So in this dream that I've had, this was about a divine feminine who had a case where she had a child with a divine masculine. And in the dream, I don't know if they were previously married, if this was a divorce situation. I didn't really get that feel. None of that was explained because this was like a years later. This was a thing where this divine feminine's child was getting ready to turn 17. And I remember because I'm sitting there and I'm watching the scenario play out, and the divine feminine is thinking like, okay, my child's about to be 17. The order ends when the child is 18. And I only have, a couple of months and a year left. And this person still owes me thousands, like tens of thousands of dollars. This was not like a small amount. This was not one of those cases where the payor was behind one or two payments and the mom was just trying to force them in court, because yes, I've seen those instances too. This was one of the ones where like the payor was a chronic non-payer. Like this person intentionally did not pay their child support, and it wasn't even because they didn't want to take care of the child. This was one of those situations where they were trying to get back at the mother, because even as I'm watching this investigation unfold, by the time they get to divine masculine, he has all of this anger, held towards this divine feminine, and it really has not, like, his spite is towards divine feminine. It doesn't even have anything to do with the child. And like in situations like those, that's really sad to me. That's really sad to me. And we're not going to sit here and act like that doesn't happen. Like, yeah, there are times we love to talk about, or people love to talk about, how women are bitter and how they use child support out of spite, and how they, withhold the children out of spite. And while that is true, and while that does happen, there are a lot of reverse situations where men don't pay, not because they don't feel like child support is not right, not because they don't feel like they shouldn't have to pay. Some of these men understand that the child support is needed in order to help care and provide for their child. Some of these men understand that the women that they have children with don't have much money and are barely getting by, and for whatever reason, they are withholding payments because of their bitterness towards that woman. Now, I don't understand, especially in a situation where you've moved on, because this was a divine masculine who was married, had a wife, and had other children, and yet was still harboring all of this anger and all of this pain towards divine feminine. And we're not even going to get into why, because for this specific dream, that part doesn't even matter, because you had your chance and you blew it, and you moved on, and you're still harboring the fact that you can't be with the person you really want to be with. But that's neither here nor there at this point. So in this dream, this divine feminine had gotten this big, this promotion, this like significant promotion, where she was going to have to relocate in order to accept this new job. So this divine feminine is relocating. In the dream, she's actually already packed up. She's in her new city, and she's headed towards the child support office to update her information, to let them know that she lives here now. She needs to have her case transferred to the new state that she's in, the new area that she's in. And in doing so, she ends up getting, and it's, that's why I say, like, it's funny how spirit works, right? And while she's heading to the office, she ends up getting a call. And this call comes in where this investigator is like, hey, I just want to give you some updates. This was like one of those cases where, like I said, this was a chronic non-payer, had not paid in years, was over $10,000 in the arrears. She hadn't been getting any updates about what was going on, what was happening, if anything at all was happening. Just kind of just left in the dark. So on her way to update, she gets a call from this investigator. It's like, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. I know that you've, probably been wondering about what's going on with your case, but just to let you know, I've been doing a lot of investigating, and it just takes time. There's so much paperwork. There's so many steps we have to go through. There's so much red tape that we have to go through, And people love saying how, like, the government is greedy. And while I do agree on that front, that the reason the government is so big on child support is because of the significant cut, financial cut percentage that they get out of it. But at the same time, even when doing so, there's still like a lot of red tape that they have to go through in order to push things forward. So this investigator tells her, like, I was able to find out. So it turns out, and the investigator, like, truthfully speaking, if this were in the 3D, the investigator technically would not be allowed. Now, whether they do this or not, I don't know, oranges and apples or whatever you call it. But the investigator typically in most cases would not be allowed to update, the custodial parent on the non-custodial parents' financial situations and what they're doing. These things are kept within the child support system, which is not, I was going to say like the court system. And although the child support orders do go to court, child support itself is not court. It's its own thing. I remember a friend asking me, like, hey, I have court for child support. Can you pick me up? I had somebody drop me off. Can you pick me up? I didn't want to have to, pay and all this stuff. And it's hard to find parking. So I go and pick them up, and I pick them up from the child support office. And I was like, hey, like, the courthouse is down the street. I thought you had court today. And they were like, yeah, we did. Like, the child support court was literally held in like, they got papers like they were going to court, but the quote unquote case was held in the child support office. And so I'm like, what? So then the caseworker was the judge? Like, how exactly does that work? But that's neither here nor there. You know what I mean? Like, even when they're going through, they still have, things that they can and can't do. And divulging information is one of those. They have to keep that. Now, if you decide to go to court, if your case goes to court, you will overhear information as they're relaying it to the judge and all of that about what has been going on and what they found. But on a typical situation, you technically would never get that information. You would, unfortunately, just be left in the dark unless, he has a messy family who likes to talk and you hear it through the grapevines. But this investigator did call this divine feminine to let her know that he had been working on the case and that there was a lot going on, and that he was basically able to find out how this man has been getting away with not paying all these years without having to go to court or, go to jail for it. And basically what this divine masculine had been doing was working jobs where he was like a lot of contract worker, a lot of temp jobs, I meant to say. He had been getting paid under the table and had been depositing his checks into his wife's bank account. So even though the checks were in his name, he was depositing everything. He was signing them over to his wife, depositing everything into her account. So it all looked like her income. Now, back in the day, you know what I mean? And we can talk about, the child support and how it even came into play, and the military, and how back in the 40s and 30s and 20s and 50s and 60s, when we were in these wars, military men would go overseas. They would start these families with these women in other countries, and then would just up and leave and go back to the States. And these women would be left with, with these children with no fathers and no income and no help. Right. And a lot of people will say like, that's how the child support system came. It was actually had a big thing to do with the military. And, while I don't know the exact history of it, I do know there was at one point where the military got very, very, very strict on these matters. And just to give like a little personal story, actually two personal stories. Like my mom and my dad were military. They divorced when I was younger. They both eventually remarried, but when they divorced, my dad was on child support, and the military took the money out of his check every month, on time. My mom got her checks, never missed a beat for as long as my dad was in the military. She got those checks every month. The military did not play about that. And I know like my cousin, he's military, and even this was like years ago, but still he's military, and he was married, and him and his wife separated, and she was pretty bitter about that. When they separated, he left her the house. He was still paying all the bills because she didn't work at that time. She was a stay-at-home wife because he was military and they had to travel so much. There was no point of her getting a different job every single place they went. So she was just a stay-at-home wife. So she goes, and after they get separated, she's bitter about it. She gets in contact with his commander, my cousin's commander, and tells him, hey, my cousin left. Everything was in his name. I don't have a job. The bills aren't being paid. The lights are off. We have no food in the fridge. He's abandoned us. We haven't seen him in days. And when that happens, technically, like, he could get in a lot of trouble for that. He could lose his rank. I remember he had recently got promoted to like sergeant. He was starting to move up the ranks. Everything was going so well for him. And she does that. And his commander, thankfully being a very smart and somewhat crafty man, instead of getting the papers and going straight to JAG and opening up an official investigation, which is what technically should have happened, the commander, you know what I mean, being a man trying to look out for another man, we can speculate how we feel about that. But in this case, it was very much warranted. And I'm not just saying that because it's family, because sometimes women, we have to look out for each other. Sometimes men, you got to look out for each other, right? So the captain ends up going to my cousin's house. Now, I don't know whether she knew or not. I feel like if you're a military wife, you know this. The military has all your information. They have your address. They have your social, the name of your firstborn, the name of all your kids. They have all hair color, eye color, height, weight. There's nothing about you, how many toes you have on your right foot. There's literally no information about you that they don't have, because you pretty much kind of sign your life away when you sign that contract. So they show up. He shows up. The commander shows up to the house while he's off duty in civilian clothes, shows up, knocks on the door, and she opens the door, TV on, lights on, AC. I forgot to mention that she said that, that power got turned on, that they were in there. I think it was like winter. And she said that they were in there cold. Either it was winter and they were in their cold, or it was summertime and she said that they were in their hot or something like that. But if it was winter, let's say heat blasting. If it was summer, let's say AC blasting. Either way, AC was working. Lights were on. Kids were playing. As a matter of fact, it's so funny because one of the things that my cousin was like that the commander specifically mentioned was that there were like snacks and food and drink boxes all over the floor. And one of the things that she had specifically mentioned was that he left and there was no food in the house. And he like made it a point to mention that like the kids were eating snacks and there were snacks all over the place, right? So needless to say, he tells her after she opens the door, he tells her who he is, shows her his military ID, and she's just basically, according to him, sitting there looking flabbergasted. And he tells her, I'm not going to open an investigation. Now, he does all this without even speaking to my cousin. So my cousin doesn't even find out about all this happening until after the commander goes back to him and basically tells him, you need to watch out for her. And he was like, you guys are separated. If you plan on getting a divorce, make sure you have all of your ducks in a row because she's going to be a problem. She's going to be a big problem for you. So being that I've seen family members and friends go through it on both ends. That's why for me, it's not black and white. It's a gray area, right? So, with that being said, my personal opinions are, neither here nor there. But what I was wanting to get into is like, there was one point where after like I said, we can get into a debate about where child support actually came from and its purposes and its uses. But, there was one point where the laws for child support had been a little bit reconstructed because, almost immediately, that they implemented it, people were already looking for ways to get out of it. So there was one point where if you were married and you didn't have an income, or if you had an income but weren't paying, they could garnish your wife's checks or your wife's like tax returns to get that money back. But like since, in more modern times, it's more of like a state by state thing now. There are some states that will still garnish the wife's paychecks if you remarry to pay for child support. But I want to say the majority of them have kind of done away with that because if you had children, whether while you were married or previously married, your wife should not be penalized for decisions that you made because she had no control over that, right? Unless y'all were in some kind of threesome thing. But, I'm not really here to get into all of that. But this is one of those states where they don't penalize the wife if the husband doesn't pay. So in knowing this, the husband was hiding, this divine masculine, this really karmic masculine, I should say, because a true divine masculine would not move like this, whether he agreed with it or not. He would have found a more diplomatic way to go about this to where the child benefits. But this karmic masculine was taking all of his money and depositing it into his wife's account so that it would basically show as though he had no income and basically was just living off of his wife so that he would get away with non-payment, which is how it had been going for all those years. And the investigator, I don't know how, was somehow able to uncover that. And because even though they lived in a state where the wife income should not be punished, because they uncovered that he was doing that, they were able to, cut through some red tape and have her bank accounts garnished. So in this particular dream, this is the message for this divine feminine was to, when it comes to this specific child support case, do not update your information just yet. Now, this is one of those divine feminines who lives her life like she's running from the FBI anyways. Like, it was really weird. Well, not really weird, because actually I know people who do this. This was like a divine feminine where whichever area you were in, you lived close to a parent, like a mom or a dad, maybe even an aunt or an uncle. But whoever you lived close to, you used their address. Like, let's say when you applied for jobs or whatever job you had your parents' address or this other person's address listed. Even on your driver's license, you had this other person's address listed. I'm hearing even where your car was registered, you had this other person's address listed. So it's not like one of those things where like, oh, if I move, I have to change it because I'm relocating and I'm no longer in that place. And I don't want my information to go to that place. Whatever information that they're going to send is still going to go to this trusted family member's address. So you'll still have access to it. But this investigator lives or has something to do with, like, if you change your location, it's going to change the investigator. And then he's going to have to forfeit all of his information, everything that he's found, to the new office. And that person is not going to be as proactive as he has. And he's gotten so close. So to someone out there that's owed like $10,000 or more and back child support from a chronic non-payer, from this, karmic masculine who's a chronic non-payer, Spirit is saying, first of all, congratulations on the job, congratulations on the promotion, congratulations on the big move. In the dream, I saw you were so much happier where you were at and where you were going. And although we say don't leave anything in the past, this one thing Spirit is urging you to leave in the past. If this message resonates with you, and if this sounds like something you're going through, do not update your address in the child support system just yet, because this investigator is so close to getting you this huge payout. Right, this huge payout from this back owed child support, from this $10,000 arrears. Right now, like I said, this is not my personal opinion. Now, in this dream, this is someone that I feel like is someone that's in a situation where they definitely need the payments. But I just want to reiterate that this is not my personal feelings about the child support system, because like I said, for me, it's not black and white. It's a gray area, and it should all be done on a case-by-case basis. But to this divine feminine, I just want to say congratulations. Congratulations, because although a lot of people are scared about what's going forward in 2025, for those of us that are on the right path, for those of us that are on the right side of karma, I can tell you now that you have big blessings coming in. So you have nothing. I don't care what goes on with this presidential election. For a lot of us that are on the right side of karma, you have a lot of big blessings coming in. And for those that are on the wrong side of karma, when 2025 comes in, all I can tell you is just to get ready and pray and hope for the best. But anyways, y'all, that is the message for today. Thank you for listening. Bye.